Aloha, everybody. This is Kaliko. We are doing live coverage today of President Trump surrendering in Georgia as he makes his way to the Fulton County Jail, awaiting some charges on um, trying to doing some election interference in Georgia. Him and his 18 co-defendants are all being brought up on charges in Georgia as it relates to the 2020 election, as they were trying to pressure the Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger there in Georgia to change some of the votes. You might recall the famous phone call from President Trump where he said he just needed to find 11,000 votes. And so he was trying to pressure the Georgia Secretary of State to actually change some of those votes. So Trump Force One just landed on the tarmac there in Georgia. There you see President Trump coming down the staircase right now. We're showing some live coverage from CNN's live stream. This is going to be interesting. This is fascinating, right? This is historic. We've never had a former president facing felony charges. This former president is currently facing 91 felony charges across 4 different cases. First starting in the Southern District of New York case around the sort of hush money payments made to Stormy Daniels. Then, of course, there is the January 6th case that he is going through, this Georgia case, and one other that I'm spacing right now. You can see a lot of the reporters were there on the tarmac following along. You see the motorcade from President Trump's basically his retinue, all of his Secret Service folks. Got ambulances that are going to be following him to the jail. We're going to go ahead and listen to some of the audio from CNN's coverage here in just a second.
Note that this is also because no one is above the law. He is not getting a pass. Yes, this is the 4th time, but and he has tried to undermine the system, the justice system, and he has done all of these posts about the Justice Department, about the judges. And we should not forget why we're here. We are here because Donald Trump did not want to give up power.
Yeah. Jamie Gagal, thank you so much. Anderson?
Jake, thanks so much. Back here with the team in New York, so we watch.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and kill that sound from CNN. But as you can see, this is now heading into what is the second day of surrenders, right? So we had the 18 other sort of co-defendants who Trump is facing charges with, and mostly all turned themselves in yesterday, trying to clear a way for Trump to let himself or to turn himself in today. So that's something that we'll be definitely watching. Rudy Giuliani, Eastman, some of these other bigger names that you might have heard about during the whole January 6th ordeal are also part of this plot right now, or this plot that they're now charging in Georgia. So I'm going to actually pull up some of the charges from the Georgia case. Some of them have to do with witness tampering, have to do with intimidation, like I said, of the Secretary of State of Georgia. Trump's bond is now sitting at $200,000. And for folks who may not know a lot about bails and bonds and that sort of thing, pretty sure you only have to post 10% of that bond price. So for a $200,000 bond, Trump is only going to have to pay $20,000 to gain his freedom. So he is going to be technically arrested and released out on bond later today. So he's going to be booked at the Fulton County Jail, fingerprinted, going to get his mugshot. I think the Trump mugshot is going to be a picture that we're going to see everywhere on the internet and on the media in the days to come. As you can see, the motorcade is now pulling away from the tarmac, away from Trump Force One, and now headed to the Fulton County Jail. One of the things I heard CNN talking about right before going live here is how the Fulton County Jail is actually pretty well known for a lot of violence inside of their jail. So you have a lot of inmates who have died from different circumstances there. In general, county jails in America are not that great. So the fact that a former president is having to actually turn himself into one is quite the situation, right? This is somebody who's used to all the glitz and glamour of Fifth Avenue in New York or 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C. So the fact that he is now going to just a regular old county jail in Georgia, where people who are facing, whether it's drug charges or domestic battery charges or those sort of baseline, really local crimes, are all going to be serving time here at this jail. We're now 18 prominent members of the Trump administration campaign team are all going to be brought up on charges as well. So you see the motorcade pulling away and going down the freeway. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to the CNN audio for just a couple more minutes, see what they're talking about. We'll come right back on the other.
Or a team of sheriffs was encouraging police to not treat defendants quite so with kid gloves.
You don't have to be so gentle.
Maybe let their heads bang into the police cruiser as you're putting them in. The irony is he was encouraging police to be rough with defendants. He is now in the position of putting himself in the hands of these police officers.
Well, there's a lot of these contradictions here. He also spent a lot of time that year talking about anybody who mishandles classified documents, belongs in jail. So it's full of interesting contradictions.
He also said publicly when he was running for office, it would cripple our government to have a president who's facing indictment and potential incarceration. Jeff Duncan pointed that out the other night. And now we're looking at the very real possibility of that.
Van?
Look, I mean, the thing to me is so interesting is the Republican supporters of Donald Trump keep saying, they don't want a two-tiered system of justice. They want equal justice. They want equal justice. No, they don't. No, they don't. Not in that jail. Not in that jail. That jail is one of the most horrific jails in the country. And one of the things that I'm observing is this is one of the richest people in America, Donald Trump. He's facing 91 felony charges. He can plunk down $20,000 and walk out. That ain't equal justice. I don't know anybody facing 91 felony charges with that much money that's going to get an escort in, an escort out. So there is there is a two-tiered system of justice, and it benefits people like Donald Trump. He keeps wanting to compare himself to Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden, 2 or 3 other people in the history of the country. Compare yourself to everybody else in that jail. Compare yourself to everybody else facing this system without all that protection, without the Secret Service, without a gazillion lawyers, without the media on you. There are people in that jail suffering right now. You don't want equal justice. You want special justice for Donald Trump, and they should admit that.
It's a really great point from Van Jones there on CNN talking about sort of the two-tiered justice system that we have. I mean, this is literally the former president going in a motorcade that's filled with Secret Service agents heading into a jail. What other defendants of any case are having that sort of special treatment, right? And as Van said, like literally only having to plop down $20,000 to go home tonight, right? So he took this private plane of his to the tarmac there in Georgia, is going to get front row valet service up to the front doors of the county jail, and then he's going to fly home on his private jet tonight, right? So it does definitely show the two-tiered system of justice where any other probably person who's going to be booked at the Fulton County jail for any other crime is probably going to have to be staying there for quite some time and not as easily able to post bond and get out. So I wanted to cover a couple of these sort of a little bit more background on the Trump sort of indictment. A grand jury in Georgia had indicted the former president and 18 of his allies, as I'd said, on state charges stemming from his efforts to overturn his 2020 electoral defeat in the Peach State. And I'm reading from CNN.com. The 41-count indictment was unsealed Monday and is the 4th criminal case that Trump is facing. The indictment returned by the Fulton County grand jury includes 13 charges against Trump. He now faces a total of 91 charges in 4 criminal cases in 4 different jurisdictions, 2 federal and 2 state cases, as I was saying earlier. There's a 98-page indictment that was handed down that covers some of these sort of some of these crimes against Trump, or some of these crimes that Trump committed. Some of them include the violation of the Georgia RICO statute, which is meant to prosecute people who are engaged in criminal organizations. And one of the things that the district attorney had made the case in this filing was that the Trump campaign had basically constituted a criminal organization and that they were working in conspiracy with each other, hence the RICO charges to try to overturn the election from 2020. And some of the irony that's been brought up this week is the fact that Rudy Giuliani, who was a former U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York and used to charge a lot of mob bosses with RICO statute violations, is now himself being charged with a RICO violation. So an interesting turn of events, and definitely a lot of irony there. A couple other of these charges: solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer, false statements and writings, solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer, forgery in the first degree, conspiracy to commit impersonating a public officer, and impersonating a public officer. One of those the background for those charges is that Trump was basically maintaining that he was going to be president, even though he was not technically elected in 2020. So, hence some of the impersonating a public officer charges that he is facing as well. So, a wide range of charges that Trump is facing, not only him, but his 18 fellow co-conspirators as well. So looks like they have a pretty good drive to the Fulton County Jail. We're going to stick live with the CNN coverage here. I'm going to kick it back over to that audio, and I'll pick it up here in just a minute.
Another prominent criminal defense attorney who is no stranger to celebrity clients. You know, when you talk to people about the reputation of Steven Sadow, and I've talked to a number of lawyers about him today, they say, look, if I were in trouble, he would be top of my list of lawyers that I would call. So we're not in a situation where Donald Trump is, hiring someone who just wants to perform on television or hiring someone who has questionable credentials. This is someone who's very well respected here in Atlanta.
And Sarah, you've been in the courtroom with Steven Sadow. What's his reputation? How do you know him as?
Oh, absolutely. He is notorious. He handles high profile cases only, usually really, really serious cases, murder, RICO, racketeering, a lot of federal cases and federal courts all over the state. And he's known as a trial lawyer. So most of the cases he has go to trial. And if not, he's also handling really huge appeals at our Georgia State Supreme Court.
Yeah, he's represented T.I., Ray Lewis, Usher, I believe. He's represented high profile clients. It's safe to say this is the highest profile case that he has ever taken. Yes. And I should note behind us, Jake and Anderson, we can see a few cars arriving. Of course, we are truly right outside the Fulton County Jail. Also, Sarah, can you just kind of walk us through what this is going to look like? What is Trump going to see when he walks into this jail?
Yes, so he's probably going to be going through the Sally Port, which is where most people go when they're booked into the Fulton County Jail. And it almost looks like a big DMV. There are chairs for different areas for processing. There's a place for mug shots. There's a place for fingerprinting. There's a place usually to fill out bonding information or your background information, getting all of your information, doing body searches. They probably will not be doing that for the former president. A lot of this has already been done. But rest assured, he's going to be in there having to go to these different stations to get his fingerprints and get his mugshot taken.
And what is he going to see as far as the condition? The conditions of this jail, they've been under investigation by the Justice Department for how the people who actually have to stay here overnight are treated, overcrowding, violence. But also, the sheriff said the walls were crumbling. People were creating shanks out of the pieces of the concrete that had broken. What will he actually physically see?
Oh, the former president will see the true conditions of that jail. I was there last week, and even going through to the elevator, the floors were flooded. The water, you're having to tiptoe around. And I know that's no different back in the intake area. The intake area is just on the other side of the front entrance to the Fulton County Jail. You can see the walls, the ceiling is leaking. There's a lot of issues with the leaking ceiling. I'm sure he'll see that when you walk in. It smells terrible.
So this criminal defense attorney from Georgia right now is talking about the conditions there at the Fulton County Jail and how crappy they are, and just like how regular people are having to deal with these conditions. If you've never watched the show 60 Days In, it's a show on the A&E channel, and it's really focused on going inside of county jails like Fulton County. And I don't know if Fulton County was on that show, but it kind of rings like a name, like it could have been on there. But the point of the show is that they send undercover regular people, sometimes ex felons and other folks who had served time. They go into jail undercover and actually try to uncover some of the things that are happening inside the jail, so that the wardens and the people who are running the jails can understand sort of like the drug trade, understand what's going on, understand sort of the ins and outs and things that are not happening the way they should be. And it's eye-opening. If you've never spent any time in jail yourself, don't have family members or friends who have, we have really, really, really shitty county jails in this country. And so Fulton County Jail is no different. It is going to be very interesting, once again, that the former president is going to be booked here. But this is not a cakewalk. And if he was actually spending time there, which he could if he was convicted, right? So one of the things that they've talked about today is that Fonnie Willis, the district attorney, has now requested a trial date in October. Originally, it was going to be sometime early next year, but because some of the co-defendants of Trump had said that they wanted a speedy trial, she took them up on their word and decided that she wanted to set the date of October 23rd, just a little over a month and a half away, to actually have the trial. And so if he and his co-defendants were convicted, they are actually looking at serving time. I believe it was up to like 5 years in jail for some of these crimes in Fulton County, and that's not counting some of the other potential time served that would be necessary for some of these other cases. But there is the very real possibility. I, at this point, don't even know how to wrap my mind around the idea that it could happen. But there's the real possibility that if Trump is convicted, he would actually have to spend time at the Fulton County Jail. What that would look like, given that he has Secret Service protection, given that he is a former president, no one really knows, right? Would he get segregated housing? Would he have some additional protection? Would he still maintain his Secret Service the Secret Service detail? I assume that he would, but I think that that's going to be some really interesting questions yet to be answered. Is how exactly are the logistics going to look when the former president is actually booked at the Fulton County Jail? So I'm going to kick it back over to CNN. You can see that the motorcade is seemingly working its way into the area of town where it seems like the jail might be. It seems like the last couple shots they've been making, they're no longer on the highway. They are now in a town. Presumably they're in Atlanta near the Fulton County Jail. So we're going to kick it back over to CNN to potentially cover as Trump's motorcade comes in to the actual jail entrance.
County Jail all day. They've grown in numbers. There is an increased amount of security behind us. Cars just lined up on the drive here. That drive that you can see behind me, we actually saw an ally of the former president's earlier emerge, Marjorie Taylor Greene, with a coterie of security around her coming out to speak to the supporters here. Now you see it is lined with law enforcement vehicles here as they are awaiting Trump's arrival to this jail as he comes in. And when he gets into there, I mean, he's not going to be spending the night. He's not going to be staying for long. But he's also never been to an actual jail that we know of before in this kind of sense. He's only gone to a courthouse before to turn himself in.
Right. I think that, it would be hard for me to imagine, even for someone like Donald Trump, that it doesn't feel like something of a wake-up call. I mean, just listening, Sarah, to you describe the conditions, describe the way the scent hits you, describe the way, even if you're not getting thrown in with the general population, which of course we don't expect Donald Trump would be, that you do get the full effect of, this is a jail that's overcrowded. This is a jail that's under federal investigation. This is a jail that, even the sheriff has been essentially begging for additional money, additional help, because he knows that they have an overcrowding issue, that they have safety issues here.
And Sarah, he's also negotiated. Sarah Murray was reporting earlier about his bond. He's worked with a bond group to put down 10% of that $200,000 bond, one of the highest bonds we've seen in this entire case. But also he's got strict restrictions coming along with that about what he can and cannot do. I mean, what do they do if he violates those? I mean, it's talking about not threatening witnesses and co-defendants and posting on social media.
Oh, I can tell you, Madam DA Fani Willis has an entire team that is dedicated to watching Donald Trump and his team. And I can tell you that if he even remotely thinks about violating that bond, she will file a very detailed, lengthy motion to revoke his bond. There will be a full-blown hearing at the Fulton County Courthouse where she'll have to prove that he violated. And if he did, he would be arrested there and taken right back here to 901 Rice Street.
And one question had been about what's about to happen here in a few moments, and now we see an ambulance pulling up, is the mugshot. I was talking to people in Trump's team earlier this morning, and they were claiming that it was still unclear whether or not the mugshot was actually going to happen. That seems to contradict what we've heard from the sheriff.
Oh, the mugshot's gonna happen.
Else. I mean, if he doesn't get a mugshot, would that make sense to you, or would that be completely out of any protocol you've seen?
No, I would be completely shocked if we didn't see a mugshot. I think we'll see a mugshot this evening. It's exactly what the sheriff
All right,
said
now
they
you
were
can
gonna
see
do.
the motorcade is now pulling into the Fulton County Jail. You can see the first couple cars of the police. One of these Suburban will be carrying the former president as he is getting ready to turn himself into the Fulton County Jail to face charges for election interference in Georgia.
We're going to treat any defendants in this case the same as any other defendant. Obviously, that's not entirely true when it comes to the former president, but he said we're going to have a mugshot ready for you.
And of course, there is his motorcade. They are turning in on, I believe that is Jefferson Street. Arrive.
You can almost guarantee you're going to see Trump's mugshot on a bunch of T-shirts coming up here pretty soon. I think it's going to be one of the most famous mugshots of all time. I think if you think back to the 90s, some really famous celebrity mugshots, whether it was Nick Nolte or Robert Downey Jr. or some of these other pretty famous ones. This is going to be up there as one of the most famous mugshots of all time. And so it's going to be interesting. I imagine he's wearing a suit. He's probably wearing his typical red tie. So it's going to be interesting to see him project strength even as he is being arrested and ultimately having some proof that he's not fully in control here.
They arrived here. And Sarah, what's the district attorney? I mean, you worked alongside her. What is she doing as all of this? It seems controlled chaos, I guess, is the phrase we would use right now. I mean, is she just going about?
There you go. So it's not just that he is pulling into the street. He is now pulling into the actual jail. Those are the gates that lead into the jail. That is his entire motorcade, all like 11 or 12 of the vehicles going through the front gate as he gets ready to turn himself in. So here we go.
Are no issues. I imagine the clerk, it's a new clerk actually, Shay Alexander is probably a part of that to make sure the paperwork goes through and bonding. He will have a booking ID number tonight, so making sure all those things are connected in the clerk's office, dealing with logistics.
And there you can see the motorcade entering.
Feel free to chime in the comments. I'd love to hear what people are thinking or where you're watching from.
As we're
What are your
covering
thoughts?
this,
Do you think he's actually going to serve any time? I'd love to hear from you. We are literally about to watch the former president get out of this motorcade and walk himself into jail. Just think about that sentence for a second, right? This is the first time in 200 years out of 45 presidents, now 46 presidents, that we have ever had somebody who left office and then faced not just one charge, but as many charges, up to 91 charges across 4 different court cases. So this is just fascinating to watch.
Of a mugshot in this case, right? It's treating Donald Trump, if he does get one, the same as any other defendant, but you're also giving him a photo that there's.
I certainly think that if we are going to have former presidents, we're going to be serving time, that they certainly should not be having Secret Service agents protecting them, right? I think if you are going to show that you're going to go against the country and ultimately try to lead an insurrection and overthrow the government, we probably should not be giving you any more money in retirement or paying for your Secret Service. I definitely agree with that. Another great comment here. I agree. Like, you should be stripped of even being called a former president, even though that is what you are. But I do think one of the things we're going to find out here is if he does in fact have to serve time, if he is convicted, will he be barred from office? And that is still yet to be seen. He is certainly still going to be and is running in the Republican primary right now. So we will see if in fact he is going to be held accountable, and if people truly are, no one being above the law in this country.
Has gone into making sure it goes through without a hitch, but it'll be interesting to see what happens inside that jail, because again, it is the Fulton County Jail.
And you know this jail well, but for people at home who aren't watching, who haven't been to Atlanta, I mean, can you just remind them, the Justice Department has opened investigations into this jail because of the humanitarian conditions. They've called it a humanitarian crisis, the sheriff had. I mean, can you just speak to what regular people who go into this jail experience?
Yes, I mean, it is overcrowded. There are not enough beds for inmates. And so at the height of COVID and recently, people were sleeping on the floor. They didn't have enough masks at one point. There was a notorious for the locks at different cells not locking, which obviously poses a security risk for inmates. There was a serious gang issue in that jail. And the higher up you go, it's 7 floors, and the higher up you go, the more serious the charges are. So people charged with murder and the most serious crimes are on the 7th floor, and down on the 1st floor, you've got mental health or special high profile people like it.
Oh, they're definitely not going to put him in Gen Pop, that's for sure. And today he's really only going to get booked and then released, so he won't be spending any time with actual people inside the jail today. But I think if he is convicted, he would certainly have to be in some sort of segregated protective custody housing, and likely still have his Secret Service detail. Really interesting right now. You can see these buses that seem to be lined up in front of the building, in between the motorcade and the building itself. I have to wonder if Trump's just going to walk between those so that people aren't able to get as good of a shot of him actually walking into the jail, or what the situation is. But it's going to be interesting to see if they can actually get a shot of former President Trump walking himself in and surrendering to Fulton County.
That they could have potentially made other arrangements in other places to do this. In my conversations leading up to it, it sort of seemed like the jail was the top of their list. The DA and the sheriff really wanted to send this message that they were going to try to treat these defendants as close to any other criminal defendant. And again, obviously, a normal criminal defendant does not get the light and sirens treatment from the airport, and it's not going to be in and out in 15, 20, 30 minutes, but it still was a choice for the sheriff to have them all come here.
And I should note that he is, we are told, being placed under arrest in Fulton County right now. He is surrendering to state law enforcement, and now he is going to undergo the booking process. And you were mentioning, did you call it the Sally Port? What did you call it?
Yes, the Sally Port. And that's where he's at. That's where you're taken. So where we're
So
sitting.
that's where he's just entering the jail.
Correct. That's the Sally Port. He'll go through there. There is a private sort of area, a class area that's enclosed. Typically, they'll do a strip search. So if you're arrested off of the street, they will unclothe you and do a cavity search to make sure you're not smuggling in contraband. And then you'll be taken inside where the intake booking in process happens with all of those different sort of sections in the intake booking area.
And is that the entrance that typically a defendant would go through, or?
It is. That is the area that a defendant would go through, with the exception of if a person knows they have an active warrant off of the street. Sometimes their attorney will just arrange to walk them in the front door of the jail and say, "Hi, my client's surrendering," and you'll do that through the front door. But if you're arrested on the street and you're taken in a police vehicle, you're going to be taken to the back to Sally Port.
And we were talking, Van was saying earlier how, talk about two-tiered system of justice and how some people are treated and how Trump is treated. I mean, typically they would not clear the streets of Atlanta to have his motorcade, to have a defendant's motorcade come through. I mean, this does look unusual than what you would typically see for a defendant.
You're right. I mean, the street.
I mean, this is like not typical, right? Typically, you're not the former president of the United States and going around doing a bunch of crimes, but that is exactly what is happening right now. We have a former president who's basically been on a multi-year crime spree and is now being held accountable for it. But yeah, as they said, they have cleared the streets. They are doing a bunch of special stuff here for the former president. I think his mugshot is going to be one for the ages, as I was saying. I actually assume that he's going to try to project, strength in his photo. I think he's going to look pretty much just like any of his other Trump photos. He kind of has his own version of blue steel that he throws out there. So I think that's probably what we're going to see. He's likely wearing a suit based on the other headshots we saw from the other co-defendants. He's likely wearing a suit, likely wearing his trademark red tie. And I think he'll have a very stern-looking, strong-looking face on him. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. That's all Trump does is try to project strength and masculinity, right? So I think that he's gonna do his best to look tough while probably peeing his pants, waiting on what's gonna actually happen with these charges in Fulton County.
How different it is, how different this experience of working for, again, the front runner for the Republican nomination for president is from what they anticipated. Organizing lawyers, sitting in a motorcade outside of a jail while you're, the person you're working for is preparing to be arrested or is under arrest for the fourth time. I mean, it's just an incredible thing to see.
Yeah, Jake, I mean, you've covered a lot of campaigns, covered the White House.
It's incredible to see that the person that you signed up to work for, after all the things he said during the 2016 campaign, including that he's fine with grabbing women by the pussy, that he thinks that people from Mexico are rapists and drug dealers, and that all of the other sort of homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic things that he said during his presidency. Like, people are still surprised that this is the outcome that we're getting with Trump. I think it's not unusual, and anybody who is with Trump at this point had to have made the calculation that they were going to stick by him no matter what happens, because it was going to end up leading to more opportunities later down the road. It's unfortunate that the American political system will likely bear that out.
Now being placed under arrest and surrendering to law enforcement. One thing that's interesting about this case, and I'd love to get our lawyers here to weigh in, is we understand that Mr. Trump is using the services of Charles Shaw of Foster Bail Bonds, LLC, to put up the $200,000. Is that normal, Michael Moore, former U.S. Attorney for Central Georgia? Is that normal for a wealthy?
How many times are we going to ask, is that
bail
normal
bondsman?
No,
in this
there's
situation?
nothing normal about that at all. I mean, and really because you're paying a bail bondsman a fee just to sign your bail. So typically somebody will either put up their own cash, especially somebody who's wealthy, they'll make a deposit.
And it's only 10% that you have to put up, right? $20,000.
They'll get the money back.
That's got to be like in his sofa change for Donald Trump.
So this is
or
this
the
is
change
this
of
is
his
really usual.
giant plane that he
Right.
Right.
It costs
Exactly.
more than that to come out. So It is unusual to see that. Some people put up a property bond if they live in the state or in the county where the jail is, but here, this is to have him use a bail bondsman is different.
Why would he do such a
I don't know,
thing?
I feel like I'm watching really a campaign trip as opposed to a court trip. And so for everything from the number of the cars in the Secret Service detail to the sort of the fascination with the plane coming in and the big production.
Like,
um,
what the hell is that group of people down on the bottom right of the screen there by those the motorcade? You see this long line of people. Like, what is that? Are those all Secret Service agents? Are those all reporters? Like, who are they?
You just nailed it.
Like you remember the back of the shirts for the Bad News Bears, they were sponsored by a bail bondsman. I agree that was the
I
sponsor.
mean, maybe he just didn't want to hand over his own money to
20 grand?
I,
But you're paying
there are
$2,000
smaller
fee
things
for
that
your
John
job.
Wilkes would throw a fit over.
sometimes you
for
pay more
sure.
than that. Sometimes you pay 10% of the bond amount. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a
lot.
hefty fee.
But even to your point about God getting off the plane and seeing the press running from one part to the motorcade, I mean, that's stuff that you really only see when it is the actual president. It's just not typical for a former president to have that kind of arrangement of a press pool and all of that.
By the way, when
Part
he,
of the
when, he,
theatrics of it.
when he came down from the plane and he said something to the cameras we couldn't hear, he said, "Thank you very much."
Yeah, I mean,
to the press pool.
He's used to coming off that plane and having people at the airport on the sidelines cheering for him and waving for him. That was typical when Trump.
Trump literally wouldn't know what to do if people weren't talking about him or giving him like attention, right? Like his oxygen is literally other people paying attention to him.
Carrying this out like he would if he were still sitting in the Oval Office.
Right, except remember what he is right now. Yes, he's a former president, but he's a candidate for president.
Yes.
So it still happens when
The
he's
striking thing, though, is he's not doing it alone. He's doing it with a significant.
What's really nuts is I'm now like getting a better view of this picture where what I thought was a line of people is literally a line of police vehicles. The police cruisers. They're the motorcycles for the motorcade. It's fascinating that you have somebody who is turning himself in for crimes to jail, who is being escorted, not arrested and transported to jail. He's being escorted by police officers who are getting paid extra money today to be on presidential detail to escort this person to jail. This likely criminal who's yet to be convicted, but someone who is charged of a lot of crimes, a police motorcade to turn themselves in today. It's just fascinating. Fascinating.
Certainly can, right? Depends on the environment. Like, let's think about this as compared to Miami, where Miami, we didn't even see barricades in front of the courthouse, right? He was able to pull right up. Of course, he drove into the building, similar to the way that he's doing here. New York City didn't shut down the perimeter around the courthouse where he was arraigned. So there are other ways to do it, clearly, other than shutting down the entire city, closing the highway, and using 50 motorcycles.
They've made a big deal about the mugshot and the negotiation over the mugshot. It might have been a more interesting deal to say, we'll negotiate over when you turn yourself in. Like 3 a.m. is a lot more secure than coming in at 7. And this could have been done quietly without all the fanfare.
Right, but also I think as Abby noted, or Dan noted, he enjoys the fanfare. He enjoys, you couldn't pick a better time to be arrested, arraigned, if one wanted as much attention as possible for it.
That's definitely one of the factors here, right? There's a lot of sort of speculation yesterday and today about like, when was Trump going to turn himself in? If you ever thought it was going to be any time other than prime time, you have not been paying attention since 2016. Like, that's the only way Trump does this, is to get the maximum amount of attention.
Jake, as we were discussing earlier, they did provide in the records his height and weight, 6'3", 215 pounds. So it's out there.
215 pounds.
Yeah, sorry.
But did
I weigh more than 215 pounds. He's definitely more than that.
he filled out some papers ahead of time?
I don't think they put him. It
Where-
doesn't look like they put him on a scale.
No, my understanding is he was given the ability to fill out some paperwork ahead of time, including his weight.
And he
I
put
don't-
down,
and
he filled out, Donald Trump
I-
said that he weighs 250
I was
pounds.
not there, but
It's a self-reporting.
but it's
It
his
is
self-reporting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's
Self-reported
lost
250
25
nice.
pounds since he was president, is what we're understanding. Because he was, I believe, Dr. Ronnie Jackson said that he weighed something like 242 for his official physical, which people at the time were skeptical of
It
that
says
number.
here, we're looking at the document.
White male.
6'3", 215 pounds, hair blonde or strawberry, eyes blue.
Did he fill that out as too, blonde or strawberry?
Blondish.
Or was that?
I think all of this was.
How does
self-fulfilling.
strawberry end up on a
Well,
booking sheet?
that's a good question. Not something I would.
Strawberry blonde.
Okay, I've never seen strawberry as an option on any form. Not that I would
Chocolate
be looking
wasn't
for
an
it
option?
anyway, but it certainly is an unusual. So yes, white, 215 pounds, blonde or strawberry with blue eyes, and then of course, of much more importance, the charges: violation of the Georgia Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, or RICO Act, and on and on and on. 13 charges, is it? He and Rudy Giuliani tied for most charges. Is this Michael Moore, a former U.S. attorney for Georgia? Does that look familiar to you?
This looks like the screenshot you would see outlining the charges. And
So I got to wonder, like, how long of a process is this going to take, right? Like, how quickly is he being processed and then sent back out the back door? You see this line of this motorcade of police officers that are just sitting there waiting, right? We're going to sit here and wait until he needs to be driven back to the airport, and then we're going to take all of these resources for these police officers to take this potentially future convicted felon back to his private plane so he can fly home and come back in another month and a half.
Wondering which ones you think are the most important, most significant. The first one, obviously, violation of the Georgia RICO Act. That is alleging that he was part of a grand conspiracy to steal the state of Georgia in the electoral college. Yes,
That's correct. That's correct. So that is by far the most significant charge he's facing. He is he will, I'm sure, at trial be portrayed as the head of a racketeering enterprise that engaged in this conspiracy to steal the election. And then you can see the remainder of the charges. These are essentially all of the elements that go into what that enterprise is alleged to have committed in the lead up to and in the aftermath of the election.
And what's the next one there?
So the next one is solicitation of violation of oath by public officer.
That is trying to get somebody who is a public official to violate their oath to the state, or to break the law, to violate their oath to the state or federal constitution. So that could have been state legislators, it could have been fake electors, it could have been leaning on State Secretary of State Raffensperger in Georgia, et cetera.
That's right. That's right. The next one is conspiracy to commit impersonating a public officer.
So that would be the fake elector.
That would be the fake elector scheme. Then you have conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree. That would likely also be part of the fake elector scheme, the signing of documents and sending those documents to the National Archives. You have writings. There's
just all the documents and saying in which he was claiming voter fraud that did not exist, including swearing in notarized documents or sworn testimony about these things that he had been told by his lawyers and his attorney general.
Yeah, it's kind of funny them bringing up some of these other charges that he is facing. Also brought up the other case that I'd forgotten about, which was the classified documents case, where he's basically alleged to have had taken hundreds of documents that were not supposed to be in his possession after his time as president, and took him out to Mar-a-Lago, where he stored them in one of his bathrooms and in one of his ballrooms, like up on a stage where a bunch of boxes could be grabbed by anyone. So like that was the fourth case that he is being charged with, also by the special prosecutor Jack Smith, as it relates to the classified documents that he stole and kept at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster, his other New Jersey property. So what a day, man. I don't think we're actually going to see Trump in this sort of thing. I think when he comes back out, he's going to go back into the bans. I think much later on, we're going to get sort of any photos that any of the photographers managed to get from long distance. I think we'll probably get his mugshot later on tonight, but I don't think we're going to get it right away. But I really appreciate everybody tuning in for another little live stream here for CalikoVision. We'll start doing these a lot more as sort of breaking news is happening, whether it's with the Trump cases or last night we went live for the GOP debate and doing some reaction there. I got some podcast interviews I'm going to start scheduling for September. I took a little time off with our baby being born, but now that she is here and healthy and happy. We're going to start doing some more of these CalikoVision live streams. So if you guys got ideas of things you'd like to cover, want me to cover, please feel free to shoot me a message. And then make sure you're following us on our YouTube. We have a YouTube channel that we're going to be starting putting some of these live stream videos out and some of our reaction videos. So make sure you're following along on YouTube, as well as some of the other media on IG, Twitter, and TikTok, all as Wiz Kaliko. But I'll keep following along with this offline. We're not going to keep doing a live stream until we get a little bit more information. But hope everybody continues to watch this. It is a historic day with the former President Donald Trump being booked on charges in Fulton County for trying to overturn the 2020 election and trying to steal the Georgia electoral votes. So until next time, appreciate you guys all tuning in, and I guess we'll keep watching where this saga goes. Aloha, everyone. Have a great day.